Hey everyone, Pugs here with two new reviews for y'all. Today I'm covering Squid Plus One and the executive treatment. Well, we've gotten Plankton focused and Mr. Krabs focused episodes, so it makes sense that we'll be switching gears and having a Squidward focused and Patrick focused episode. Sandy, Mrs. Puff, Karen, Pearl, and Gary when? We all know the answer's probably never. Or maybe I wouldn't quite say never, but perhaps highly unlikely is the better option. Alright, well, anyway, as always, I want to say thank you to everyone who's decided to check out the video today. Y'all are so appreciated. And now, let's just get right into it. Remember everything I was saying when I reviewed Plankton's Pet and Safe Deposit Crabs about how the show is beginning to focus on other characters besides SpongeBob? Yeah, well, Squid Plus One is another example. Yes, of course, SpongeBob appears here, but truthfully, this episode is pretty much all Squidward. And that works out quite nicely because Squidward is written very well here as we watch him be the cause of his own misfortune. It's always good seeing some universal justice being doled out, and it's also fun to see him interact with other Bikini Bottomites, something he rarely does outside of his snide remarks at the cash register. So let's just say I'm pretty stoked about this episode already. We begin somewhat similarly to Lost in Bikini Bottom in that Squidward is doing some self-care. In this case, he's making himself a nice dinner and setting up his living room with a table for one. It's pretty nice. If I had a coffee table, I could see myself doing something similar. And then, of course, before Squidward can enjoy his dinner, the doorbell rings, and who else could it be but SpongeBob? This bit between Squidward and SpongeBob is pretty entertaining and full of great expressions too. And then I like how after Squidward goes back to his dinner and the doorbell rings again, he ends up yelling at the mailman. That was too funny, especially with how sensitive the guy is. And this first instance of Squidward being rude to a Bikini Bottomite is a great look at what's to come, as Squidward will, of course, proceed to be rude and insufferable towards every person he comes across in this episode, but it's all done in such an entertaining and enjoyable way, as it usually is when it comes to Squidward, with some glaring exceptions. But anyway, the reason why the mailman is at Squidward's house is because Squidward has received an invitation to a gallery opening, an invitation for him and a +1. And so here is where our plot comes into play. I like how the mailman sticks around for a bit uninvited, it's so funny. Squidward starts getting insecure about having no friends thanks to the mailman's assertion that everyone will think that Squidward is a friendless loser if he goes without a +1, which isn't true by the way. But anyway, since Squidward is insecure, he spends the episode going to literally anyone he can think of, anyone who isn't SpongeBob anyway, to see if they'd join him at the gallery opening. And again, I just have to point out the way that the expressions are pushed in this scene and throughout the episode. I will maybe not mention this every time, but I just think that since these exaggerated expressions are such a common talking point surrounding the show now, it's important to highlight when they're beginning to show up here. But back to what I was going to say before I stuck that in there. See, I think Squid Plus One misses an opportunity to actually use the established camaraderie between Mr. Krabs and Squidward, but it's okay because in exchange we get to see Squidward interacting with the mailman and Larry the Lobster of all people, so that's pretty neat. Squidward tries being friendly with the mailman first, and it goes okay. Well, awkward as hell, but alright, until eventually the mailman goes off on a rant about clarinets and Squidward just can't take it. This part is too funny, and also relatable because I too feel like I am too opinionated sometimes and go off on my rants and tangents when I really should stay quiet. Not on this channel, of course. I can do whatever I want here. But when talking to people I don't know too well, yeah, it can be hard to really keep it under wraps sometimes. Squidward then tries to befriend Larry after the lobster comes to mind when Squidward is looking at a can of protein powder during another one of the running jokes in the episode where SpongeBob is trying to get Squidward to ask him to be his +1. This is such a random character duo and I love it because I love me some duos that we've literally never seen interact before. And surprisingly, they actually kind of hit it off. It's fun seeing Squidward choose to be spontaneous for once, not to mention doing something extreme. And I love how the jet ski joins them like this is gone. And then, even though Larry is only in the episode for a bit, we get a pretty good idea of his character. He's a pretty chill dude. I like how he feels strongly about not disrespecting other people's passions. It's nice. But then, of course, Squidward can hardly return that same courtesy as he goes off on a rant about protein shakes, which pisses Larry off and ruins Squidward's chances of having him as a +1. And so Squidward is eventually forced to accept SpongeBob's friendship and offer of a +1. At least kind of, since Squidward ends up going to the gallery with the best +1 he could have, himself. Yeah, this is a perfect ending for this episode, and for someone as self-absorbed as Squidward. I love it, and it just makes me think about what this episode is maybe trying to say in general. Is it about how it's okay to go to events by yourself because who gives a damn if other people are going to judge you for it? Or is it a warning to not be a miserable, judgmental asshole or else no one will want to be your friend? Well, I think the latter is for sure endorsed by this episode, even if Squid Plus One is not trying to impart any sort of lesson. Anyway, I enjoyed Squid Plus One. This was a really good episode that put Squidward in the hot seat for a change, and I liked seeing him interact with the mailman and also with Larry, who I never would have expected Squidward to have a substantial interaction with in a million years. This episode kind of reminds me of Sponge Kano, which is a bit random, but I think it fits. But anyway, I thought this episode was funny and enjoyable, and so I think it works best in my amazing tier, where it comes into a score of 9.1 out of 10. Is it just me, or are these episodes focused on characters that aren't SpongeBob coming in pairs? I guess it's only happened twice now, but I don't know, seems suspicious. I'm joking, but anyway, the executive treatment is a Patrick episode. It hasn't been too long since we've had one of those, but, well, Patrick episodes are always a special case for me since I generally think they're good like half of the time, since I often think Patrick struggles to carry an episode on his own and needs to be accompanied by at least one character he can bounce off of throughout the 11 minutes. And this episode does give him that, so we're already off to a great start. The executive treatment begins with Patrick walking into the Krusty Krab. I'll always enjoy Mr. Krabs' constant disdain of Patrick. I mean, on a character level, it makes sense. Mr. Krabs hating the guy who has no money and just, in his opinion, bums off of his best employee. But also, it's funny to think that it's the result of the events of an episode like Pat No Pay. I mean, Mr. Krabs does call Patrick a freeloader in this episode, so I mean, kind of lends credence to both explanations here. Anyway. Also inside the restaurant are a bunch of business fish in suits on their lunch break, which is kind of a stroke of realism. I love how over-exaggerated the business speak is here, and I love how Mr. Krabs is upcharging food for these business executives, which is interesting because they can't all be executives, right? I guess it depends on how you're defining executives, because when I hear that word, I'm thinking like the top dogs at a company, not just normal business people. Anyway, Patrick hears about this upcharged patty and wants to try it. Unfortunately for him, since Squidward, in a move that I'm sure Mr. Krabs was proud of, made Patrick pay to dress up like a businessman, Patrick is mistaken for an actual executive by the business people, and so he's swept away from the crowd, or by the crowd, and kept away from his sandwich. And so from here, it's pretty obvious where the episode will go, with Patrick getting up to who knows what once he gets to the office building, and I'm excited to see how this will all play out. His horror at being taken to the building is pretty funny. I too scream in horror about attending meetings in conference rooms. This episode reminds me a lot of the Inmates of Summer, with Patrick somehow doing just fine as a businessman despite not being one at all, and it's just really funny. Patrick's foolishness plays off of the exaggerated business culture in this episode very well. I enjoy every scene of him in this conference room with the business people, and especially the stockholder guy. It's always fun seeing these characters excel in an environment that they don't belong in at all. At least kind of. I mean, the stockholder guy was going to fire Patrick. And then I love when Patrick reveals that he's not an executive at all, and how this lands him in jail. Wasn't expecting that at all. Thankfully for Patrick, SpongeBob visits him in the slammer, and then he finally gets his sandwich. And it turns out the sandwich wasn't even that good. And I love how Patrick just has this deadpan expression when he suddenly puts his tie and glasses back on, making him have a bit of a Perry the Platypus moment with none of the guards knowing who he is, and the episode ending with this hilarious stinger of SpongeBob not knowing who he is either. It's just bizarre and unexpected. I love it. I really liked the executive treatment. This episode was funny. Not outstandingly funny, but it was still quite funny. And I think that's mostly because this episode suffers from the curse that all Patrick-centric episodes do, which is that Patrick is the character I find the funniest least frequently, largely because the type of humor they use for him doesn't really align with what I find to be the funniest, if that makes sense. I like witty, dry humor the most. That's not really what they do with Patrick. But that doesn't mean he's not funny, as clearly he is, just not my preferred brand of humor. But beyond that, this is easily the best Patrick episode we've had in a long time, like since No Hat for Pat. I think this is because the executive treatment finally returned us to some of the fundamentals of Patrick. He's a fool, but not incredibly incompetent, and he has real motivations and emotions just like any other character. That's the formula, and it worked here just fine. And so I'm putting this episode into my amazing tier, where it comes into a score of 9.1 out of 10. As always, I'll be ending this video with some closing thoughts of mine. Man, 4 amazing tier episodes in a row? That's pretty impressive. Seems like Season 9B is getting off to a great start. Certainly much better than 9A, which didn't even have an amazing tier episode until 8 episodes in. So now I'm wondering if 9B is going to keep up this stellar start, or if we're going to be hitting our first roadblock soon. Guess we'll have to wait and see. And really, that's all I can really say in these closing thoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and close things out here, and I'll see y'all in the next review.